So I'm Ruth Owen, I'm the Deputy Director at FEANTSA, and we've organised this webinar as an info session to talk about a call that was recently published. It's the first call under the new European Urban Initiative, and it's an innovative actions call. So it's focused on the new European Bauhaus and its core values of sustainability, inclusiveness, and aesthetics. And we think at FEANTSA that it's an exciting opportunity for cities to develop projects with EU funding to adapt and transform buildings into affordable housing solutions for homeless people. So we organized this info session for cities or urban authorities and their partners who might be interested in developing a project under this call to tackle homelessness. So, as I said, I'm Ruth Owen. I'm the Deputy Director at FEANTSA, and I have two panelists with me today: Romain Turminel from the Secretariat of the Urban Initiative, and Clotilde Clark-Foulquier, who is the coordinator of the Housing Solutions platform in FEANTSA. Romain is here to present the call in some detail so that you understand what the opportunity is and how it could be used to develop projects on homelessness. And Clotilde will share with us some interesting examples of the kinds of housing solutions projects that could be developed under this call. Without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Romain to present this first Innovative Actions call under the Urban Initiative. So thanks very much, Romain, over to you.
Thank you, Ruth, and it's a pleasure to be here. Welcome, everyone. I'm just going to share quickly my presentation and then starting. Hopefully you can hear me better. I changed the connection. It was not really manageable before. Okay. Okay, perfect. So to begin this presentation, just maybe to introduce myself, I am Romain Turminel, Project Officer at the EUI Permanent Secretariat. And okay, so to begin with this presentation, I'm going to make a quick introduction. I mean, come back on what was EUI before, what was the Urban Innovative Action initiative from 2014 to 2020, but just really going quickly on that and really to emphasize on what is the European Urban Initiative and focusing on the new features of our initiative, and going forward to the funding opportunities and especially this first call proposal, which I believe is what interests you the most today. So for starters, just a quick comeback on Urban Innovative Actions, which we call ourselves the Urban Lab of Europe. And just this idea about what was stated in the Article 8 of ERDF when it was designed by the European Commission to really give to the cities the possibilities to identify and to test new solutions for sustainable urban development. And there was really this idea to provide urban authorities with resources to test new and unproven solutions. So just as you can see on this little map of the project, we had 86 approved projects from 19 member states, more or less gathered across Europe, even if, as you can see, there is a lot of dots, especially concentrated on Belgium, Netherlands, and the north of France. But other than that, more or less, lots of projects from all countries in Europe. And during this initiative, we had 372 million euros committed to the development of these innovative actions. We were covering 14 different topics. As you can see, lots of different topics, all of them related to the teams and the partnerships developed by the urban agenda of the European Union. And as you can see, there was one specific topic related to housing, some topics related also to the integration of migrants and refugees, or to the topic of urban poverty. But really, I think the thing to remember from this topic is that we really developed this cross-cutting, this idea of to be cross-cutting and really to focus on different thematic area at the same time, and not only focusing on these individual topics.
Romain, I'm sorry
Yes.
to interrupt you, but one of the participants just asked if you could, we're seeing your presentation in presentation mode, so the same way that you see it. Could you just put it into full screen, please?
Sorry.
So,
yeah, just a sec. Is it working better this way or still the same?
it's still the same in that we see there. That's better.
Okay, perfect. So let me come back. Here we were. What is the European Urban Initiative, and more specifically, what are the differences between the European Urban Initiative and Urban Innovative Actions? So in 2020, for the period of 2021-2027, the Commission has re-expressed its interest in the support given to the cities, with a new budget of overall 450 million euros for the next period, of which 70% will be specifically dedicated to innovative action. So in terms of funding directly offered to support cities. And I would say also the main important things to understand here is that this new name is not just a way to confuse everyone and to give us the opportunity to display a new kind of logo or a new graphic image. It's also to emphasize on new features that are introduced to this new initiative, and especially new opportunities for cities. So as you can see, the idea is still to emphasize on the identification and the taste of innovative projects, but this time really giving more power to the transferable and scalable solutions to sustainable urban development. So this is one of the main really thing to understand here, is focusing, yes, on innovative solutions, but at the same time to make them transferable and scalable across Europe. The initiative overall has also been created in order to build cities' capacities for sustainable urban development. In other words, the idea is that in this new period, we will probably found almost the same amount of cities as there were funded in our EUI, so roughly 90 cities. But the goal is really to not make it so that not just these cities receiving direct funding will be benefiting from the solutions, but really to inspire and to build capacities for all other cities of Europe to really make the solutions that have been developed benefiting to as many cities as possible. And this is why there will be emphasis on communicating, disseminating the knowledge from the implemented projects, and really further building on the lessons learned and their experiences. So exactly what is the topic for today? The first call for proposals, which has been open since October, what do we want in terms of projects under this initiative of EUI? So this is more or less similar to what was already offered in UIA. We still want innovative projects. What we say is that we want them to be new or untested solutions with the potential to be replicated in other European cities. By new and untested solutions, I would say the idea is to really think of EUI as a last opportunity of funding your project compared to regular ERDF. If something is considered to be too risky for other type of fundings, this is what we are looking for. This is why we have what we call the right to fail, because we are really dedicating ourselves to supporting risky projects because they are really innovative and giving you the opportunity to do something that you would not do because you are not, there is no 100% chance that it will be really working the way you designed it. We still want to support cities up to 5 million euros ERDF with a maximum co-funding rate of 80%. The main beneficiaries are urban authorities. So we call the term urban authorities, but it can be cities or it can be associations of groupings of urban authorities with a total population of more than 50,000 inhabitants. So I'm not going to go into the details of what makes an urban authority eligible for EUI right now, because you can find this information easily on our website. There are different typologies of urban authorities eligible. If you have any question, please come back on to the EUI Secretariat on that after this presentation. But just to understand the main criteria of eligibility is being an urban authority of 50,000 inhabitants. Regarding the implementation period, contrary to what was under UIA, the implementation period has a big change. It's now 3.5 years with prior to this period of 3.5 years, 6 months of project initiation phase, and after 3 months for administrative closure of activities. And the thematic scope of support for each call for proposals, the scope will be defined by the European Commission based on the themes identified in the urban agenda for the European Union. In this case, the first call proposal will be dedicated to the new European Bauhaus, but I will come back to that later. We want this project to be innovative, as I was saying. We want them to be of high quality. We want them to be participatory in a way that we know that the urban authorities leading the project cannot perform the project alone. They will need stakeholders from the cities. It can be NGOs, it can be associations, research centers, universities, partners from the private sectors. Really, any entity established in the European Union is eligible. We want this project to be measurable, so we called ourselves an urban lab. So this means that the project and the results of the project needs to be measurable so that we can know if it can be scalable or if it can be transferable. And we really want this project to be implemented in partnership. But the city keeping the leading role as a strategic partnership leader. This project should be in line with the goals and the local strategies and policies that you are developing in your cities, because the idea is really, as I was saying, for the city being the strategic partnership, this project needs to be in line with the specific challenges of the cities and the specific challenges of their inhabitants. And finally, this project needs to be in line with the spirit of the principle of good urban governance as it's described in the New Leipzig Charter. So this is especially related to the integrated approach, really to make this project based on the need of the citizen and not bottom-up, but contrary top. Yes, actually, a bottom-up project where the inhabitants really are involved in the design and in the process. One key new component of EUI is the transfer. For each project, the lead city will have to identify 3 partners in Europe, so 3 other cities from different member states. And the goal of this transfer component is threefold. First, it's really to involve the transfer cities in observing the implementation process of an urban solution and the testing of a pilot solution. And the idea is to propose an exchange of knowledge and experience. And I think the most important word here is exchange. It's not just one lead cities inspiring the 3 transfer city. It's really the 4 cities talking to each other and exchanging on what are the different challenges that they all face and how can the solution that is developed be already adapted to all the different environments, the different specificities, really to make the solutions already adapted to other regions in Europe. When we are talking about transfer, it's really a preparation for possible adaptation. It doesn't mean that during the 3.5 years of implementation, we are expecting for the lead city to develop its project and the free transfer city to already adapt it during the 3.5 years. It's really the preparation so that at the end of the project from the lead city, the free transfer city are ready to start adapting the solutions through pilot solutions to local conditions. Each of these cities will have a dedicated budget of 120,000 yearly of contributions. And what type of activities can be funded? It can be study visits, workshop, meetings, expertise, analysis, mini pilot actions. And really the expected outputs of this transfer is for the city to conduct self-evaluation at the beginning and at the end of the cooperation to really understand how ready they are to replicate the solution and to create a feasibility analysis of the pilot solution to really understand what are the key steps needed to adapt the solutions and when are they ready to start. So for this first call for proposals, which opened on October 10th, the deadline is for January 19th, 2023. And the topic is the new European Bauhaus. So I'm going to try to explain as simply as possible what we intend with this topic, and to try to connect it to the theme of the meeting today. What we want when we say that we want a topic in line with the new European Bauhaus is first to try to connect them with these 3 basic values of new European Bauhaus, which are to make project beautiful, sustainable, and inclusive. When we are talking about beautiful projects, it's not, it is thinking about aesthetically pleasing, but it's also about connecting the project with art and culture to really make them responding to the needs and improving the quality of experience and of sensation beyond mere functionality. This means that we really want projects improving the quality of life of the inhabitants living in the cities beyond just focusing on functionality. Sustainable, I think it's self-explanatory. We want project compatible with nature, the environment, with the planet. We want cities to be not breaching through environments, not breaching through ecosystems, but really favoring green transition. And we want this project to be inclusive, that is to say, to make it that there is no discrimination toward cultures, disciplines, gender, or age, that the project encourage dialogue between representatives of different cultures. Really, the idea is really to make it that I think it's what is more in line with the topic of the discussion about homelessness, to make it that in a city there is no issues of housing, to make it that it's more difficult for certain categories of people to access to housing. We want this project to be participatory at transdisciplinary processes anchored at local level, and especially we want this project to be frontrunners to inspire cohesion policy for implementation at wider scales. And to make it a bit more concrete about what type of project we are looking for, there are these 4 prompts for the new European Bauhaus that you can see on the screen. So to understand these prompts, it's not a topic. It doesn't mean that you need to be specifically in line with, for instance, the number 1 or the number 3. It doesn't mean that you need to be in line with the 4 of them. It's more like indication for you to better understand what type of project are we looking for. We are looking for projects related to the construction and the renovation in the spirit of circularity and carbon neutrality. So to say it more simply, looking for projects relying on green technologies, minimizing energy consumption or waste, but it's also focusing on regenerative architecture, encouraging sustainable behavior for the inhabitant, and especially taking into account the participation and the inclusiveness, and really including the users and the wider community to improve the sensory perception of the space of the cities. We want this project to be, another prompt is about adapting and transforming building for affordable housing solutions. This is focusing of energy poverty, including inhabitants in the redesigns of the building, about revitalizing the deprived neighborhood, fighting, for instance, depopulation or segregation, improving the sense of belonging and care, and improving the climate resilience of the city. It's also about avoiding urban sprawl or reducing commuting. And it is also related to temporary emergency responses with sustainable and aesthetic standards. Another prompt is about regenerating the urban spaces, especially, for instance, focusing on areas which are abandoned or faces difficulties. It can be about insecurity, it can be about segregation, it can be about the reconversion of brownfield, the renaturation of cities or green infrastructures, and improving basically the livability of the cities. And last one, preserving and transforming the cultural heritage. It's really about enabling the collective reinvention of our cities and really offering renewing dialogue with history. I'm going quickly on this slide, sorry, but there are lots of keywords that I just dropped, but I'm happy to come back on that later if you have a specific question about one or related prompts, and especially how they are related to the topic. Just to give you final information about practical information for this call. So as I was saying, the deadline is 19th of January. The total budget for this call is of roughly 50 million euros. We have organized, we are still to organize 2 applicant seminars, one in the city of Sofia the last week of November, and one in the city of Vilnius the first week of December. You can still register to this event if you are interested to participate. They are basically 2 days event during which you can meet a part of the EUI permanent secretariat. We have also developed a self-assessment tool that you can use on the EUI website to check if your project is relevant already. And we are organizing 3 thematic online sessions, each dedicated to one specific topic, and you can access to the recording of the first session, which already took place 2 weeks ago. Finally, you can book also meetings with the EUI Permanent Secretariat. So everything is happening on our website, and I think this is on my last slide. Yes, you have the link to our website if you want to register to either one of the few elements that we dedicated for supporting applicants. And just to let you know, it's still a long view, but there will be future calls for proposals in 2023 and 2024 on topics we do not know yet. But just to let you know that there will be other opportunities after this open call. Thank you for your attention. That's it for my presentation.
Okay. Thank you very much, Romain. I think that was a really helpful overview of what the call is about and what the opportunity could be for cities, as well as some of the practicalities. I think the new European Bauhaus is a concept that many people have been struggling to get their heads around, but it's a big priority for the President of the Commission, and that's why so many different calls at European level are dedicated to that initiative at the moment. And I think what's really important for this audience is that the inclusion part goes along with the beautiful and sustainable part, and that the Commission has been quite sensitive to the importance of social inclusion, because I think it's a perceived weakness of this kind of initiative. And so when it did its communication about the new European Bauhaus, it really emphasized social inclusion, emphasized reaching the people and places that most need these kind of projects. And it also specifically emphasized homelessness. So I think that's really encouraging. And I think it was nice to finish with the short deadline of the 19th of January, if cities are interested, but also knowing that there's a longer view with future projects possible as well. So it seems like there's a great opportunity on the table to develop projects, especially with this kind of transfer of existing buildings into affordable housing solutions. And I would now like to open the opportunity to give specific questions to Romain. We'll have an overall Q&A, so maybe the bigger ideas about projects, etc., after Clotilde's presentation. But if you have any questions for clarification about the call as such, you can either put them in the chat or raise your hand, and I'll give you the floor. We have already one question, Romain, which I can maybe signpost to you to start with, was about this partnership for knowledge sharing element. And somebody just wanted to clarify, are we talking about, there's one main project that then has to develop a partnership with 3 other cities, or is it 4 different projects that then have to create a coalition?
No. It's one city applying for the call for proposals. So the same mechanism as was happening in UIA. You are one urban authority. You are established in the European Union. You apply for the project for the grant of 5 million euros, and basically during the first 6 months after you you are funded, you are selected, will have 6 months to identify 3 cities in the European Union which are interested by the solutions that you are developing and who are interested in participating to the implementation of this solution. And so it doesn't mean that you need to find right now the 3 cities who would be with you if you are interested in applying. If you already have cities interested in coming with you, you can definitely talk about it in the application form for the funding, but it's not mandatory at the stage of application to have these 3 cities with you. And the project that they are developing, they are not developing separated projects. They are basically participating to the one that you are doing. And they are here to exchange with you, to discuss, to really be involved in the design of the solution in order to better be prepared to start replicating at the end of the implementation period. So it's really one project with 3 cities being there to exchange and learn from your experience of the lead city.
Okay, thanks. And I think maybe just to add something, that if cities are applying and they need help identifying other cities that might be interested in homelessness, like I think FEANTSA can be a resource in that respect. And it sounds from like what Romain was saying that you don't have to have all the answers at the application phase. This is something that you have to build into your project if it happens, to exchange knowledge and kind of make sure other cities benefit from it as well. There was another question. Somebody's asking, could an NGO be a leader of a project in collaboration with other stakeholders or the city?
So the leader needs to be a city or a grouping of cities. But then if you have, if an NGO has a large, I would say, responsibility in the partnership, it's possible. Just the application needs to come from a city or groupment of cities. An NGO will not be eligible. But in an NGO can definitely be involved in the partnership and have co-responsibilities in the development of the solution, as long as the overall legal responsibility remains toward the EUI secretariat remains in the city.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. If there are any more questions kind of specifically about the call, we could take those now. And then we'll move on to Clotilde's presentation. So I see there's a question about the money. So 5 million ERDF for project, then 120,000 per city. I think that relates a little bit to what you just said. My understanding is that of the 5 million, that is of the up to 5 million that a city could receive to do their project, they would have to dedicate 120,000 to this partnership with 3 other cities to share what they're doing.
Yes, that's exactly that.
Okay, perfect. And then there's a question, how could partners be identified as interested and willing to participate?
Yeah, so maybe I think this question might be like, how are we building partnerships in EUI compared to other types of funding like Horizon or Interreg or this type of thing? In EUI, we really want the partnerships to be built around the city at the scale of the territory or the region. Usually in UIA, in the project, the cities were with stakeholders established in the city, for instance, enterprises, universities, organization, NGO, which are really the key stakeholder in the city for the topic that you want to address. If you are doing a project about homelessness in the city, you could involve the local association, associations, the regional associations, really all the stakeholders which are already on the ground and are already knowing what is the local environment. So I would say, if you are looking for the partners, just first step would be to look at the partners that you are already connected to, and the main stakeholders in the activities that you are already performing. I don't know if it's answering your question.
I think that makes perfect sense. So I think NGOs in a given city, if they want a project to happen, they have to go and talk to the urban authority in question and convince them to lead the project in partnership with the actors on the ground. And then I think we have one follow-up question in relation to the coalitions. So how will €120,000 support the coalition, exchange of experience or investment in the 3 different cities to implement some of the ideas created?
Yeah, as I was saying, we call it this transfer mechanism, but we are not expecting you to deliver pilot actions during the 3.5 years. This €120,000 per cities, it's really a budget in order for you to realize site visit to the city, to collaborate, to deliver exchanges. But it's not about really starting piloting the solutions. It's a budget basically to make it that you are involved in the project.
Okay, perfect. So to wrap up that discussion, the main points are that the focus of the call is the new European Bauhaus. Within the new European Bauhaus, inclusion is a big priority, and the reuse of existing buildings to create affordable housing solutions is a priority under the call. The solutions should be tested in one city, but there's a new mechanism by which cities are asked to share the learning during the implementation of their project. It has to be urban authorities, cities that lead the projects, but they should do so in partnership with other organizations locally. So thanks very much, Romain. I put the link to the call in the Q&A.
Great,
and there was a great invitation, I think, at the end of the presentation to get directly in touch with the Secretariat if you are developing a proposal and have questions. Clotilde, could I give the floor to you, please, to share some kind of inspirational or thought-provoking examples of housing solutions projects that reuse existing buildings to provide housing solutions to homeless people?
Sure, thank you. Okay. Sorry, just give me 1 minute. Okay, thank you very much. So I'll take 10 minutes because Ruth thought it could be interesting for participants to hear about some of the examples that FEANTSA has already identified and that fit the objective of the new European Bauhaus and could also fall into the framework of projects developed by city to adapt and transform building for affordable housing solution, regenerate urban spaces, and also preserve and contribute to preserve and transform cultural heritage. And of course, renovation and construction as well. So many of the things I'll mention, I'll be quite superficial, but you can access the resources through the report we have done. Feel free to contact us if you want more information. But one of the reports FEANTSA already did in cooperation with the Fondation Abbé Pierre and the Council of Europe Development Bank is actually a report on how to convert multi-unit non-residential building into permanent housing for those in need. So what is multi-unit non-residential building? Well, it's building like hotels, offices, and other collective form of housing. So the project, the report showcase some example and some key elements to take into account when developing those kind of conversion projects. And one of the key projects at the heart of the report is actually a US-based project, which was initially called Room Key and became the Home Key project. It's a Los Angeles-based project. During the pandemic, there was a need to find emergency accommodation for homeless people. So Los Angeles City used hotel to provide emergency accommodation, but then didn't want to bring people back to the streets, so decided to actually buy the hotels and transform them into a permanent housing solution, and it became the Home Key project. They acquired 20 buildings, so motels, multi-family building, and nursing homes, and turned them into permanent housing solution. Another project in this report is in Amsterdam. It's a transformation of office space into student social housing. So you can read more about those in the report, but I just highlighted like 3 key elements maybe to take into account in converting those office space or nursing home into permanent housing solution. One is to make the program part of an overall objective to create adequate housing. And this means being based on partnership, a bit like what Romain mentioned, the importance of partnership, together public authorities working with NGOs, involving possibly users in the design of the project. And what came back from many of the projects we spoke to was a need to set out from the start what is the resident profile, the profile of people who will be living into those housing solutions, because depending on the profile, you will need different kind of support. So that's an element to take into account. Also, build the project in a long-term perspective and therefore think carefully from the start about elements such as localization and what access it will give to public transport, to support services, for instance, health services, and also the energy performance of building elements. And it is linked to the last point on the budget, and that came from the Los Angeles example that really insisted on the need to see from the start what will be the conversion need in the project, for instance, in terms of energy performance, accessibility of the building, fire regulation. So those are just some concrete keys. But I will stop a bit longer maybe on this. This is a work as well done by FEANTSA, Fondation Abbé Pierre, and Housing Europe. It's a 50 out-of-the-box housing solution. So we identified innovative housing solutions, and you can find them online. And they, in particular, look at vacant building mobilization, conversion of shelter into housing. And there are lots of other examples, but I'm going to stop on 4 examples, and I hope they can provide some inspiration. So those are the theme of the 50 solution in the publication. The first example we wanted to highlight is in France, in Lyon. It's a home Silk Road, and we wanted to showcase it because it's an urban innovative action. It's the transformation of a former urban wasteland, converting more than 20,000 square meters into various elements, including a very strong cultural element, making a building available for civil society organization, but also temporary modular housing solution while the project is being prepared, and long-term housing solutions. Ruth knows more than I do about this project if you have questions. Another very interesting example was in Scotland, and it's a help desk office built by the churches. So the idea is the trust element, that churches had lands that they didn't use, or buildings that were not fit to the purpose of today because maybe they were too empty, they were not energy performance, but the churches didn't trust the property developers to bring them the best advice for them. So together across denominations, they set up an information office with people who really knew about housing and property development, and helped and advised different churches on how to sell some of their land, how to adapt some of their building, and often including an element of property development into affordable housing solutions. Another example, which is also linked to that, because it's in London, it's a Shepherd's Bush Housing Association who manages more than 5,000 homes in West London. And their challenges was how to continue develop affordable housing when we are in West London. And it's the same idea than the project before. It's how to redesign the property development. So, for instance, by converting some buildings, community buildings often. So the Shepherd's Bush project helped communities to transform their building to make them energy efficient, and maybe redevelop by adding an additional floor on top of the community facility to provide affordable housing. And so they helped as well in the finance design of the project to enable often local community action groups to make a better use of their spaces. And therefore hitting the element of sustainability and inclusion from the new European Bauhaus. And another project we wanted to bring, and it's not so much about the housing per se, but it's about what can you do with the housing to make it inclusive. So this is a Home for All project in Denmark. And basically it's a coalition of 19 partners, including municipalities, NGOs, and other actors, who convinced foundation to use their student housing to make actually 10% of the spaces of their student housing available for young homeless adults people that would commit to go back to study. And in exchange, the municipality ensured case management, social support to those students, and took the financial responsibility. And in exchange, the foundation agreed to make 10% of their building available to those young people. And the idea was also really community building, community support, and that it's not only about housing, but about equipping people as well to stay in housing. Last example, and you might have heard about it quite often, it's the Finnish example of converting shelters into supported accommodation. This has been a key for Finland to address homelessness, converted short-term emergency shelter into long-term accommodation, providing support services available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and providing apartments that were already furnished, but also common spaces to enable and facilitate social networking. And this is quite a key. There is so much more that could be said about that, but I just wanted to raise it to your attention. So to finish, some key principle maybe in adapting and transforming buildings for affordable housing. The first thing is that if the aim is to provide housing for homeless people, it shouldn't be only about housing, and it's important to also feature in the social service aspect from the start of the design of the project. Also important to build in the project around cross-sectoral perspective and partnership, ensuring to bring expertise from different actors. Last element that I mentioned at the start, especially important at the moment, is the long-term affordability of the project in the context of increasing inflation and energy prices. How to make sure that those new converted buildings will actually enable affordable energy prices on the long term. And the key to the housing, based on the housing first approach, but always important if you look at this inclusion dimension, is to ensure that tenancy available through those housing solutions will be proper tenancy and not short-term. Yeah, that's it for me, I think, but I'm very happy to speak more about it if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thanks a million, Clotilde. That was a really concise but also inspiring, I think, showcase of some of the practical ideas that can deliver affordable housing solutions for homeless people using this kind of reuse of existing buildings. So we have a Q&A scheduled now, and I see that there are a couple of questions in the chat that we should come back to already, and that Sandra Aruca has a question with a raised hand. So you're very welcome to either raise your hand or put questions in the Q&A, and I'll give the floor to Sandra to ask her question. So I think you have to activate your microphone, Sandra, in order to ask the question. Okay, well, while you get ready to take the floor, if you indeed want to take the floor, let's go back to some of the questions in the Q&A. So the first question, which I guess would be to Romain, is does the detailed technical design of a project need to be submitted at the application stage? And another question, maybe also for Romain from Alessandro, which is, does the project have to focus on refurbishment of a building, or could it pay existing services and focus on comparison between different cities of good practices?
Yes. So for the question about technical design and project, no, this is not mandatory at the application stage. If you already have something in view and you can already include it in the application, in your application file, this is more than welcome. But this is not the type of information that we already expect from you at the application stage. At the application stage, you really need to demonstrate the will of the city to accomplish the project, and at the latest during the initiation phase, you need to deliver the permits if you have renovation or construction to be forecasted in the project. But this is not mandatory at application stage. And so does the project have to include the refurbish of a building, or could pay existing services and comparison between cities of good practices? No, it's not necessary to refurbish a building. If it's what you need, then yes, you can do it. If it's not, don't get included. It's we are an initiative focusing on cities, and this topic of new European Bauhaus, focusing on the aesthetically pleasing. Of course, it leads to the impression that it's all about making beautiful buildings, but it's really not. When we talk about beautiful or aesthetically pleasing, it doesn't mean that all the projects need to be about refurbishing. It can be about areas, it can be about spaces, it can also just be about what was also most important, which is the inclusiveness, and making that the project is adapted to the need of the citizen and of the users in the city.
Okay, great, thanks. But maybe just to say, in addition to that, I think that the focus of the call is on innovative actions. So, like, I'm not sure that a proposal that just presented to fund some existing services would be successful, because the whole logic is the idea to test something new in a given urban area. So that has to be, I think, the logic underpinning these kind of proposals.
Yeah, if I can just complete on what you've said, I would say also, if what, for instance, about refurbishing a building or paying existing services, just think about could you make this project happen through regular ERDF or through regular funding? If the answer is yes, then it's probably that it's not so innovative and it's not really what we are looking for in EUI.
But I think FEANTSA's experience as an organization working on homelessness is like there's no shortage in the scope for new housing solutions for homeless people in cities around Europe. It's an area where like the needs are enormous and often unmet. So that's why like we think that this kind of call offers interesting opportunities and why we organized this session. Yeah. So if people have other questions, please feel free to raise your hand or to pop them into the Q&A. I think maybe one question from my side to Romain, and it's maybe a bit of a tricky question, but I think that it's like a few months to put these proposals together. And at the same time, the bar is quite high in terms of asking cities to come up with new things that they've never done before and to fit all these criteria. So I just wonder, like, could you give some advice to cities on that, or is it the reality that some of these projects might be things that were already kind of in the pipeline? I think that would be quite helpful, because I think the idea of coming up with something completely new in this sort of time frame is a bit intimidating sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. I think, I mean, if in just 3 months you have the time to create entirely something new and find the partners, then congratulations, this is amazing. But no, I really think, and yes, the timing was very short. We received this information, new European Bauhaus being the topic, very late. At the same time, the EUI was created just this year, so it was a bit of a rush for us also to launch the call for proposals. So no, we are not. We know that the timing is very short. This is why, indeed, as you were saying, Ruth, I think the best way to see it is if you have already an idea or something that you wanted to develop, but you are lacking the funds, or I don't know, something for which you already have identified the partners, but they will need funding to really jumpstart on the solution. This is really what we are looking for. And when we say that we want new and untested solution, it doesn't mean that it has to come just from an idea and has no base whatsoever. Innovation, it is always relying on already existing experiences that maybe the city already has, or maybe that you have seen in other cities and you think might be interesting, adding up new elements. So no, definitely, I think if you want to apply to EUI, I would say the first tip would be to start with the partners that you already have, because this way you are sure that you are starting with other organizations which will be committed into applying and really sharing the burden of making the application form and really designing the whole project, and start with something that you already have an idea or maybe a concrete examples of what it could be. But yeah, definitely.
Okay, thanks. And maybe just to add to that on the innovation front, I think like a big part of FEANTSA's work, and that was very much what Clotilde was presenting in the second presentation, has been like, I guess innovative doesn't mean completely new or untested. I think we have a lot of ideas already, a lot of proven examples of things that really work to provide long-term affordable housing for homeless people or people at risk of homelessness, very vulnerable groups. So like we know what the needs are, and we have a pretty good idea about the kinds of ideas, the kinds of solutions that could be put into place. It's just that this is a nice packet of ERDF money made directly available from the European Commission to help cities do some of that in an experimental short-term way, but that's an exciting opportunity. So I have a question in the chat from Alessandro, which is probably partly a question to FEANTSA and partly a question to the Urban Initiative Secretariat. Could FEANTSA be a partner of a project? So maybe from FEANTSA's perspective, I could say that I think FEANTSA, we see our first role is like making people aware of the opportunity and trying to help cities and their partners think about what they could use this call to do. And we hadn't really thought of a direct role for ourselves because the projects are very much implemented in one place. So it's really about, compared to other kinds of European projects, which often focus very much on a European partnership dimension, that hasn't been the case with innovative actions so far. But then as Romain presented, there is more of a focus on that now in this call. So maybe that would create opportunities to work with FEANTSA for this like transferability bit. But it would depend also on our capacity and our real added value to be a partner per se. I think in the first instance, our role would be more about helping to connect to other partners and helping to design the project. But it might be possible, and maybe this new focus on the transnational learning might create more of a useful role for FEANTSA. And we often play a role kind of on the steering boards or advisory committees and that kind of thing for this type of project, but without wanting to take up the same volume of, I guess, operational resources that real project partners would. I don't know if Romain, you would add anything to that?
No, just to say any entity established in the European Union is eligible. So if FEANTSA wants to participate, you are definitely eligible. And regarding your participation, indeed, it's about justifying the needs and competencies that you want to have in your project. If it's not something which can be found directly within the city, and you need to involve someone from your region or from the European Union at a broader scale, just as long as it is well justified in the application form, there is no reason why it's not eligible.
Okay, thanks. So I think it's also something we could talk further about if there was a project from Rome, I guess, Alessandro. Yeah, we can talk about it more bilaterally. There's another question from Teresa Albuquerque in Palmela in Portugal, again asking, does the project have to be presented by a city, or may it be done by an organization? She represents the Islamic Foundation of Palmela.
Mm-hmm. So yes, the city needs to be the leader of the European Urban Initiative project. This is absolutely mandatory because this is the city which is receiving directly the funding from the interested entity. So it cannot be an organization, but as I was saying, the organization can have a major part in the project as long as you understand that everything needs to come from the city.
Okay, so somebody else is asking whether we can share the list of participants, perhaps to help people find potential partners. I'm happy to share the list. Obviously, we have to respect the data sharing rules, but if if there are no objections from participants, I'm happy to share the list of names as a follow-up of the meeting. And then there's a more technical question. Would buildings that were going to be transformed have to be owned by a municipality?
No, they can be owned by one partners of the project. It doesn't need to be the municipality. There is no problem about that. And maybe if I can say also something about this question about ownership of the building, you should also know that, as I was saying, we are in EUI asking for a 20% contribution from the project, and actually the value of a building can be included as in-kind contribution in this share of budget. So actually, if you have a building which needs to be refurbished or which will be used in the design of the project, you can include the value of this project in part of the 20% contribution.
Okay, thanks. That's a very helpful detail, I think. Yeah. And maybe just to say, as an example of how these partnerships can work, I think the project that Clotilde mentioned at the beginning of her presentation, the Home Silk Road project, is interesting, but A, because it was funded under the previous calls of this type, and B, because it was a good example, I think, of this quite comprehensive partnership. So the Métropole of Lyon was the leader of the project, but then you had the local social housing companies, the local NGOs working with homeless people, the municipality where the actual site was in Villeurbanne. And those are the types of actors, I think, that need to come together in partnership to do this type of project. And so there the land was, before the project started, it belonged to the state, and then it was bought by the social housing company at a kind of discounted rate at the outset of the project. So yeah, I think that's just from a project that's actually happened, maybe some examples of how some of those practical things look. And then there's another sort of technical question relating to buildings. Could the property in question belong to a public authority that is not in the partnership and, for example, be leased for long-term by a partner? And if so, could it still count as a contribution to the financing?
So no, to be counted as a contribution, it needs to be from a partner involved in the project. Otherwise, can the property belong to the authority not in the partnership? So you mean, for instance, if you want to conduct some refurbishment or renovation to a building which is not owned by the municipality nor by the partnership, it can be possible. But I would say the easiest way would be to have the owner in the partnership. But if you can design another type of governance which does not rely on that, I think it could be possible, yes.
Yeah, I would think that if the project focused on turning a building that's leased on a long-term basis by one of the partners into an affordable housing solution, then that probably would fall within the scope. Although I can understand it might be annoying if you couldn't use it for co-financing. Okay, and then there's a question for further clarification about who has to coordinate the project. I think the answer is not necessarily municipality, but an urban authority has to be the applicant and the coordinator of the project, and they can be working in partnership with whoever they need to work in partnership with to deliver the project. So one of the other partners in a partnership could be the initiator and come with the idea, but the urban authority would have to be in the lead position. I don't know if maybe, Romain, it would be worth saying a couple of words about what exactly an urban authority is, because we keep hearing about municipalities, but...
Yes. So an urban authority is a local administrative unit of more than 50,000 inhabitants, or it can be a grouping of local administrative units which together gather more than 50,000 inhabitants. And they need to be classified as according to their degree of urbanity defined by URBACT. So this is a bit complex, but to make it as easy as possible, if you go to our webpage, you will find the correspondence table to see clearly what is the code of your local administrative unit and what is the population according to the last statistic made by Eurostat. Sorry, I was looking for the name of the organization. So you have either one of these three possibilities. Either you are one local administrative unit classified as an urban area and of more than 50,000 inhabitants, or you are an already established entity. For instance, in France, we have this groupment of communities which are already legally established and recognized by the state, such as you were saying, Route Métropole de Lyon is an example of this case with municipalities already gathered. This type of organization in France or in other countries are also eligible as long as they are more than 50,000 inhabitants. And finally, it can be an informal cooperation of some cities, not necessarily reaching 50,000 inhabitants, but altogether reaching 50,000 inhabitants. And in this case, one city would be the leader and the other would be associated urban authorities. So in any case, it will always be one city or one groupment of cities designated as the main urban authority responsible for the partnership, or as you say, the coordinator of the project.
Okay, thank you. And then just to draw your attention, I guess, to the fact that in the Q&A, there are a few people either sharing their contact details or inviting people in different countries or cities to get in touch. So please take a look at that, especially if you're in Belgium or France or Portugal. Because, yeah, hopefully that is part of the point of this kind of information session, is that people can get in touch with each other afterwards. Okay, are there any more questions, or is there anyone who would like to share anything about a proposal, an idea, or something that they are thinking of doing in their city? Okay, not yet. Okay, well, in that case, if there are no more questions, I'll give you a final chance to raise your hand or to write a question in the Q&A if you have one. Yeah, there's a comment saying that the deadline is very tight, which is true. And somebody who's struggling to see the responses to the questions, I'm not sure we can fix that now, but maybe we can make the Q&A available as part of the follow-up of the webinar. But I think if I can wrap up very briefly, I would say, thanks for attending. Thanks for our panelists, Romain and Clotilde, for your interventions. I hope that people have come away with the idea that this call can be a good opportunity to access EU funding to test something new in terms of housing solutions, especially with a renovation or a reuse of existing buildings dimension to address homelessness. Like, we're very much available at FEANTSA to help you if you want to talk further about that. As Romain said, you can also contact, or urban authorities can contact the Permanent Secretariat about any aspect of a proposal. Clearly, like, the time is short, but I know from some of the bilateral conversations that we've been having that there are ideas in the pipeline, and I hope that the message has also come across that as long as the idea and the proposal is strong and coherent, the details don't need to be necessarily figured out at the application stage. And I think my understanding is that there is a sensitivity in relation to everything to do with the new European Bauhaus around the inclusion pillar, because it's vulnerable to being seen as a kind of top-down, technological, ecological, aesthetic project, and therefore I think that there's real interest in projects that look at real social problems like homelessness. So those would be my concluding words from the session. Good luck if you decide to apply, and please keep in touch, and FEANTSA will definitely do whatever we can to support good project proposals under this call. Thank you very much. Thanks again to the speakers. Sorry about some of the technical problems at the beginning, and we'll share everything that we promised as follow-up. Okay, thanks a lot. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good day.